Hello, this is Mr. After All. Just going to chat for a little bit about London by William Blake. Talk about three quotes that I think are good ones to remember for the poem, and also a little bit about context. So firstly, a little bit about context. Now, I think the most important thing about this poem is the type of poet that William Blake was. So William Blake is a romantic poet. So when we talk about romantic poetry, we're not talking about love and romance in terms of relationships, but something a little bit different. So the two things that apply to this poem in terms of romantic poetry are, number one, the fact that romantic poets loved and worshipped nature, and we get a little bit of a reference to his appreciation of nature, or at least a criticism of the fact that nature isn't appreciated by man. And then the other thing that romantics are passionate about is an anti-authority stance that they take. They felt the world was being run wrongly, that the poor were being oppressed. William Blake himself saw what was going on in the French Revolution, where the working classes rose up and overthrew the elite, and he was encouraged by that and felt that Britain should follow a similar path. So that's the kind of poet he is, and that applies to the poem in a number of ways, and the quotes that I'm going to talk about link to that idea of him being a romantic poet. So the first quote is the repetition of the word chartered. He describes the chartered street and the chartered Thames. So chartered means owned, and the streets and the Thames are owned by the government in this sense. So the Thames, the River Thames, is a river, and the ownership of that is something that Blake is critical of, because as a romantic poet, he wouldn't approve of the idea of nature being owned and harnessed by man. He thinks nature is above man and more powerful, and something that we should worship. And so the fact that it's owned and tried to be taken under control by the government is something that Blake is hugely critical of. And so that repeated adjective, chartered, is just a single word that's really useful to remember in terms of this poem, and it links directly to context. Another quote that I think is really important is that the mind-forged manacles. So he uses that in the second stanza, and manacles are like handcuffs, and forged is created. So he's suggesting that we have created our own form of entrapment. So we have chained ourselves by what our minds believe. So he is offering an alternative way to view the world. He's offering us that we should get out of the entrapment of our own minds, and the trap that we're in is believing that what the government tell us, following what authority has told us. He wants to overthrow that, and he's suggesting that the only reason we act and do the things that we do is because we've been brainwashed, we've been tricked. It's a metaphor, so it's worth mentioning that as well in terms of analysing that quote. The third quote, the last one, I'm going to say slightly longer one, is hapless soldier's sigh runs in blood down palace walls. So hapless means unfortunate. So there's some sympathy for the soldiers there, the working classes, and they are sighing. So that verb there is one of misery. There's also some sibilance, the repeated S sound in that quote. Hapless, the S at the end of hapless, soldiers sigh. So that sibilance has got a miserable quality to it. We're encouraged to feel sorry for this soldier. His misery is difficult for him to cope with. It's an emotive detail in this poem. So sibilance is used, and then it describes that sigh running in blood down palace walls. So we've got this metaphorical image of him sighing outside a palace and the sigh running in blood. So the blood being shed is the suffering that he's been through. The suffering that he's been through will be on behalf of the people inside that palace, the royalty. He's gone on 4 battles for royalty, and now he's on the outside of the palace walls, which means he's not allowed access. So there's this criticism, linking back to the romantic ideas, of authority that shuts out the working people that have fought for them. and his suffering is running in blood, it's running with suffering down the outside of that wall. So much to zoom in on and discuss with that quote. The unfortunateness of the soldier, the sibilance in the hapless soldier's sigh, the fact that the sigh is metaphorically running down the wall of the palace. We could talk about the juxtaposition and the contrast between the palace walls and the soldier's sigh. So loads in that quote, bit of a longer one, but a really, really worthwhile one to remember. Okay, thank you.